In this video, we're going to build an app that accesses a database on a remote server. And the server we're going to be using is a Microsoft SQL Server that's being run in the CIS department. So I'm going to start a new Android project, and I'm going to call this Fired Up because that's the name of the database we're going to be accessing. And the Fired Up database is a demonstration database that tracks invoices, purchase orders, and repairs for customers for a mythical company that sells and repairs stoves. So parts databases, suppliers, all sorts of fun stuff. But we're just going to create an app that browses the data to see how the access goes. And I'm going to go ahead and this time I'm going to start with API level 11 because I'm going to be using the grid view, and there's some stuff that I want to do that isn't supported in API level 10. So API level 11, I'll start with the blank activity, and my main activity, I'll just leave that main activity. Resize this a little bit. So let's get started with the layouts. I'm going to basically have two panel layout. So when the user connects to the database, it's going to list all of the tables and views in the database and just a list on the side. And then when the user selects any table, it's going to show a grid of the data from that table in the second panel. And the data grid in the second panel is going to have two parts. It's going to have a header row, and it's going to have a data row. And I'll just start with the landscape version of the app, and then I'll do the portrait version later on. So I'm going to start by turning this into a linear layout. And once again, this is going to be the landscape version. So the top layout is going to be horizontal orientation. And I'll just leave the rest of this the same for now. I may come back to it. Instead of a text view, I'm going to have a grid view. And the width is going to be 0 dp. And the height is going to be match parent. And this is a singleton tag, so I'm just going to make it singleton. And I'm going to attach a weight to this. We'll make this 1. And then for the data view, I'm going to create another linear layout. And the width is going to be 0 dp. And there'll be a weight here as well. Oh, let me do the height first, match parent. So I'll attach a weight of 4 here. So 20% for the list and 80% for the data. And then inside of this linear layout, let's make this vertical, I'm going to have two grid views. So the first grid view is going to be the header row. Width will be match parent, height will be wrap content. This is a singleton tag. And then the second grid view is going to be my data view. And the width here is going to be match parent, and this will be wrap content as well. It's a singleton. And so let's attach some IDs. So this is going to be the table list. And this one is going to be the table data. And I think that's enough to start. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. This one is the table list. And then this one is the table data header. And this one is the table data. We'll call this table header and table data. So now I think I have everything. So I'm going to come back here and fix some stuff up, but this is enough to get started. So let's go ahead and look at our Java. And before we do anything, we need to get a library to access the data. And for Microsoft SQL Server, there's a couple of choices, but the one I like is something called JTDS. So Java Table Data Stream, JTDS. And here's the main page for it. There's a download, and this is all native Java. So let's go ahead and grab the latest one, which is 1.3.1. And I'm going to download this distribution. And so this is going to my downloads folder. Let's go to downloads, and I'm going to extract all. I already have a copy, so I get open paren 1, close paren. And then my folders, you'll see this JTDS-1.3.1.jar. So I'm going to copy that and then go to my Android project, and I want to find the library directory. So I'm going to go to the project layout, and under app, you'll see this libs folder that doesn't have anything in it. I'm going to paste my library in here, and that gives me the library I need for the database. So let's go to the source main Java main activity. And so what I'm going to do here is start out simple. When the app starts up and becomes visible, so on start, I'm going to have a separate class that handles my database stuff. So let me start by overriding on start. And this time I'm going to remember to call super.onStart. We'll see how many times I missed that. So I want to make a connection here. So I need my class, and I'm going to right click on the folder and create a new Java class. And this is going to I'll call this the database fetcher. And I want a create method. And the database fetcher is going to need to have access to the activity as a callback so that it can go ahead and call the main activity back when certain events happen. So for example, the main activity is going to ask the database fetcher to fetch the list of tables in the database. And that can take some time, and it uses the network, so it's not something we want to do on the main UI thread. We want to start a new thread in the database fetcher that handles that so that the UI thread returns right away. But then at some later point when the data is actually fetched and the database fetcher is ready to send the results back, it needs to be able to tell the main activity, here's the data. So we're going to need a callback activity. So I'm going to create activity, let's make this private activity and listener. And then I'm going to create a constructor that requires an activity to be passed in, and then it's going to set mListener to that activity so it knows who to notify when the data's arrived. So now in my onStart, let's go ahead and create a private database fetcher and fetcher. And here we're going to initialize mFetcher to new database fetcher, and we're going to pass in this activity. And now we're ready to connect. So here's where the heavy lifting starts. So I'm going to create a new method public so that the activity can call it. It's not going to return any values. It's just going to return right away. And then let's call this connect. So in order to make a connection, I need to know a couple of things. I need to know what server the database should, what server the program should connect to, where the database server is being run. I need to know what database to access. I need to know the username and the password for that user. So I'm going to pass these in as values. And I forgot the database. And what I need to do is create a connection string, and I need to load the driver to talk to the Microsoft SQL Server, and then I need to call the connect method and pass in the connection string. So let's create a connection string. And then the syntax for this is a little obscure. So let's go back to the JTDS site. And so I'm going to go back one to the main JTDS homepage. Actually, I'm going to go back several to the main JTDS homepage. And click on documentation. And here's a link to the FAQ. And here's the documentation for the connection string right here. So I'll get that to the top. So here's my Android Studio, and there's the connection string. So I want JDBC, and this is used by the driver manager to find the right driver, and JTDS is used to find JTDS, and then the server type is SQL Server, and then I need the server address, / plus server plus, and then I don't need to specify the port. I do need the database, so / actually I can specify this differently. So now I have some arguments, so I'm going to include semicolon database equal, fired up, equal plus, and then database name. And let me wrap that, plus semicolon, and then user is equal to username, and password is equal to password. And then I need to load the driver here, so class.forName, and that should be documented here as well. So we want to find the driver, the package for the driver. Oh, here it is. So class.forName net.sourceforge.jtds.driver. So let me copy this. And paste it in. Okay. And I think this is actually database name. So I'm going to change that. So now I have a connection string, I have a driver, and now I want to make a connection. So connection, and let's make this actually private. Let's make this a member variable so we can use it in other methods. Okay. So I think we want the driver manager dot get connection, and then pass it in our connection string. And if this works, we should be connected. Now, these commands throw errors, so let's go ahead and add try catches. So we'll add a try catch block there, and this should be in there, so let me move that up there. And then add a catch clause. So I can get a class not found exception here, I can get a SQL exception here, but if everything has worked correctly, I should be connected to the database. So let's go ahead and just run this. Well, actually, let me go to my main activity, and I'm going to call mfetcher.connect, and I'm going to pass in cisdbss.pcc.edu, and then for the database name, I'm going to pass in fired up with no spaces. The username is, now in a real application you would want to ask the user for the username and the password. And you certainly wouldn't want to put the password in clear text inside your program for reasons that should be obvious. But for this, since it's just a demonstration database, I'm not going to worry about that overly much. I'm not going to create the fragment for having the user log in and all of that stuff. I'm just going to do this quick and dirty. So 275 student, and the password is also 275 student. And this should be almost enough to test. Now we have a problem here, and the problem is that anytime you do any network stuff or anything that takes a long time to run, you cannot do it on the main UI thread because it will cause your app to lock up until it finishes. So what we're going to do here is, instead of having all of this stuff just be a method, I'm going to put it inside of a runnable and create a thread that uses that runnable. So thread equals new thread, and then that's going to take a new runnable, tab, and then all of this code goes inside of my run method. So what happens when the thread gets run? And then at the end I have to remember to start my thread by saying thread.start. Okay, now when I do that, you'll notice these get little squigglies under them. That's because, for reasons that are more advanced than I want to get into here, if you access a variable outside of the method here, if it's referring to something in an outer class, then you need to declare these as final. So I'm going to just make these be final, string server, final, final, and final. So if you get to CIS 233J, they'll talk about that there, but for now I'm just going to do it. So now I should actually be able to connect here. Let me add one other thing. So my main activity on start, when the app becomes visible, it's going to connect to the database. So to balance that out, I also want to override on destroy, public void on destroy, and here I want to call database fetcher, or mfetcher.close. So I have to define a close method, public void close. And first let's make sure that we actually have a connection. So if we do have a connection, then we're going to call mconnection.close. And then this is going to have to be wrapped in a try-catch as well. So that looks good. So now in my onDestroy, I can call mFetcher.close. All right, so this will create the connection when I attach and destroy the connection when I close. Okay, so I didn't get any log messages here. So let me try it again. All right, so I think I got an error. Let's see what I got. Oh, no address associated with host name. Okay, so I might have gotten the wrong. Let me take a look at my connection, cisdbss.pcc.edu. Oh, missing internet permission. Yeah, so I have to give my app internet permission here. So that's going to be in the manifest. And right at the top, before the application, I'm going to add uses permission. And I need internet. Oh, internet. Right? So now let's try it. Okay, so my app ran and it didn't crash. So I think I'm on the right track here. So let's go ahead and implement another method on our database fetcher to actually fetch the list of tables in the database. So first thing I want to do though is when the connection is successful, I want to let the main activity know that the database is ready so that it can go ahead and fetch the list of tables. So I'm going to implement a interface in my main activity and define the interface in my database fetcher. So public interface on database ready, and I'm going to create public void on database connected. Let's call this on database fetcher ready. So this isn't, let's see, this doesn't need to take any arguments because I don't need to pass any values back to the main activity here. I just need to let it know that it's ready. And then I don't put anything there, just semicolon. So now in my main activity, I want to add that it implements that interface. Implements on what did I call that? On database. Oh, this should be capital O here. There we go. So the class name has a capital O, the method has a lowercase o. On database fetcher ready. Okay. So now if I Alt plus Enter, implement methods. Okay, so here's the callback I'm going to get when the database is connected. And what I'm going to want to do is call another method on the database fetcher. So mFetcher dot, let's see what I want to do. Fetch table list. So I have to implement that. Do it above the close. Public void fetch table list. Let's make sure I got that. Good. So here I want to get the metadata for my connection and then loop through the metadata. So let's start by trying mconnection dot get metadata, and that's going to return database metadata. And this can return a SQL exception, so try catch. All right, breakpoint right here. So what I want to do is make this activity not an activity anymore, but make it an on-database ready fetcher so that it has the methods it needs. And then here I'm going to coerce my activity to an on-database ready fetcher ready. Okay, so now here I should be able to call it. And then that will tell the activity that I'm connected, and then it will call fetch table list. Okay, so I got my callback now. So let's go ahead and step once. Let me continue here. And I just need to put a no-op. Let me put a breakpoint. I need to put a line here that I can put a breakpoint on. So log.d so I want to put the breakpoint after the data is fetched. Alt plus enter for the log. And let's run it again. Okay, so now I'm here, and under variables I have my data. So this is what I get back from the database. So let me run this. So the way I get the list of tables is I create a result set. Alt plus enter, and then do get data dot get tables, and then I have to supply some arguments. So null, null, percent, and null. So let's look at what I just did. If I go to the declaration, so catalog is null, schema pattern is null, and then table name pattern, I can specify which table names I want to come back. And percent is a wildcard in SQL. So this basically says return all tables, and then types is null. So this will return a list of all of the tables. And now let's go ahead and debug this to see exactly what I get back. So I'm going to log.d, let me create a log tag here. So log.d log tag got here. So I just need a place to put a breakpoint that's after I've gotten my result set. And now let's run it under the debugger and see what we get. Okay, so here I have my result set rs. And here are the columns. And so I want table name, which is item 2. And so I got an error because I forgot to call super.onDestroy. So let's fix that. And that's in my main activity. Okay, now let's run it. And let's try changing the screen orientation so no crashes. And then we'll back out. All right, so no errors. So now we have our result set. Now the way you walk through a result set is going to look basically like this. Say, so while rs.next, so that's going to fetch the next row of data. If there is a next row of data, this will return the row of data. Otherwise, if you run at the end, rs.next is going to return null. So as long as there is a next row of data, we want to call rs.get string, and then the column we want is column 2. So this will give us the text of the table name, and then I'm just going to log that here. So this should write all the table names to the log if this works correctly. Let's go ahead and try it. Oh, so no, I got the wrong column. Oh, no, let's see what I got. I got a bunch of DBOs. So I want the DBOs, those are the database objects, those correspond to tables. I don't care about all the system tables and information schemas and all that other stuff. So what I really want is type is equal to rs.getString2, and then if type dot equals DBO, then name is equal to rs.getString, and I think it's 3. So now let's try it. Oh, okay. So that looks correct. All right, so I have a customer, email, employee, line item, invoice, part, phone, PO, and so on. So this is actually what I want. This is the list of table names. So now I have to put it into a data structure and return it back to my main activity. So I'm going to use an array of strings, an array list of strings. So let's make an array list. We'll call it results. And that'll be a new array list of strings. So there's my array, and then every time I get a new name, I'm going to add that to the array list. So at the end I have an array list. So then I want to call a new callback, which I have to define. So this is going to be on table list, and this is going to take an array list of string called results. And so here I'm going to call that. So our dot on table list result. All right, so this passes it back to the main activity, and then on this side I have to implement that method. So on this side I get the results. So now what I want to do when I get the results is I want to get the table list from my layout, and then create an array adapter using the array list and set it. So let's create a new array adapter. String and then I have to specify some parameters here. Let me come back to this. I actually think I want to make this a member variable as well, because I'm going to need to access it when the user clicks on an item in the list. And then the arguments here are the current context, which is main activity.this. And then I need the layout for the list itself, which is going to be android.r.layout. And I'll use simple list item activated 1. And then I need a layout for the text itself. I'm going to start with android.r.id.text1. And then I need the initial set of data, which is going to be results. Okay. There we go. So if I've done this correctly, the results should actually appear in the list. So, and then what I want to do is attach this array adapter to the grid. So let's get the grid view. And this is just like finding any other thing in the layout. And this is the table list. Alt plus enter. And then grid dot set adapter adapter. So if I've done everything correctly, my results should show up in the list now. Oh, yeah, I forgot one thing. This has to be run on the main UI thread, so I think this is probably, let's see if I got that error. Yeah, only the original thread that created a view hierarchy can touch its views. So the problem is that the thread that's doing the callback is that new thread I created in the database fetcher. But to actually modify the grid view, I have to do that from the main UI thread. So what I'm going to do is run on UI thread and then create a new runnable. And then the code of that runnable is going to be all of this. So now this is going to complain that this isn't final, so I have to make this final. And now let's try it. Okay, so they're here. Looks pretty ugly, but my results are showing up correctly. We were working on landscape, so here's what it looks like in landscape. So part of the problem is I have all this dead space over here, so let me just cut the padding down a little bit. We go to my main layout. Let me switch back to Android view. So that's under the dimensions, and I'm going to change this to 2dp and 2dp and 2dp. And now let's see if it looks any better. Okay, so a little better. So I can improve the appearance of this by making things a little closer together, but that's enough for part one.